California is still on fire, and more high winds is the last thing they need. Now, friends are sending me some surreal photos. Encino Hills and Encino proper, where the fires almost look like a sunrise. Above their place on Mulholland, it's surrounded by the National Guard. And finally, fire trucks are being pre-positioned along with other emergency vehicles in this Bel Air Church parking lot. First responders are working round the clock. We should thank them, and they should be rewarded handsomely for the work they're doing. Neighborhoods have been dealing not just with panic, but as Matt just said, with the fires as well, but the waves of looters, some of them appearing on scooters. Well, these 4 pieces of human fungus were arrested in Santa Monica over the weekend. More on that coming up. One of them was even busted with a dagger and a window-breaking tool. The politicians in charge, of course, all Democrats, insist, though, that nothing could be done. They couldn't have done anything because the winds were too strong, the fires moved too fast, and indeed, they did move fast. But of course, we all know that the mayor was thousands of miles away on an international boondoggle when ominous weather conditions were forecasted. Even though she promised, by the way, when she was elected, she would not go on foreign excursions. Just another politician's promise broken. Now, we know that for whatever reason, they did not pre-position enough fire crews in vulnerable areas when Mayor Bass was over there in Ghana. We know they allowed at least one major reservoir to remain out of operation. That was critical. And that, of course, in some areas, water pressure fell dangerously low, and sometimes even ran out of water altogether. Even Gavin Newsom himself has a lot of questions. He's doing an investigation. And at the same time, we know that diversity often trumped merit in hiring and promotions, and it still does in California. We also know that millions could have been directed toward better emergency services that were instead spent on illegals that California happily welcomes in. And of course, we know that that helped fuel homelessness, which is skyrocketing still in California, and at points has also posed its own fire risk, with people lighting fires outside for cooking and so forth. And of course, we know that will strain the school system, which now ranks a pathetic 34th in the nation, despite the highest taxes in the nation for the people who live there. We also know that there's an exodus of businesses already from California, and that the wealthy are leaving, and the middle class, they're picking up and leaving as well from the state. It's simply too expensive. So although California is so incredibly beautiful, it has so much promise, so much still brainpower, such rich history, courtesy of horrid liberal policies, California has, in a metaphoric sense, been burning for decades. Now, given this, why should we listen to the same people who helped cause the education disaster, the fiscal disaster, the immigration and homelessness and drug disaster, and who didn't get the state ready soon enough to battle the current disaster? Why should we listen to any of them about how to fix California going forward, when the flames are finally put out? We know this already. We know it's going to take hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild L.A. County. And Newsom, he has bold plans.
We're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team looking and reimagining L.A. 2.0. We're already talking to civic leaders. We're starting to organize how we can put together a collection of individuals on philanthropy for recovery, how we can organize the region, how we can galvanize the community with folks that love this community to really develop a mindset so that at scale, we're dealing with the scope of this tragedy and responding to it at scale with efficiency.
Too much hand gestures. All right, over the weekend, Newsom tried to stem the public's anxiety and anger by signing an executive order to streamline permitting for the rebuilding of lost or damaged property, even nixing some environmental regulations that, of course, hampered builders in California for years now. Well, we're actually encouraged by that, but the proof will be in the pudding. The main concern of so many who've lost their homes is having the ability to rebuild their single-family homes, again, given the high costs and given the fact that In some cases, like I believe State Farm was one of them, insurance companies began to pull out of California. That's also because of the California regulations not letting rates go up. But in California, environmentalist radicals have succeeded in making the state among the most expensive for construction costs in the United States. Because the liberal dream that's been called sustainable housing, which really means high-density housing for most people, meaning goodbye single-family homes, hello to high-density housing. Can put out the fires a lot easier in high-density housing. Everyone's in one place. But the old Brady Bunch view of California, a family house with a backyard, maybe a few cars, a neighborhood, I think that's what most Americans want. But I'm telling you tonight, despite what we're hearing from Gavin Newsom, and we look forward to seeing his plans, do not be surprised if you start hearing more politicians and more activists clamoring for smarter, safer housing options, which, again, on the surface, it sounds great, right? Who doesn't want smarter and safer homes? But remember, they're going to blame everything on climate change, meaning they can't really do anything except change the way you live. They can't govern differently. They can change the way you live. And always remember this. The rules that they put in place won't apply to them. They never do. Remember Gavin Newsom's French Laundry dinner during COVID? That kind of told the whole story. So as Californians are being chased off beaches, they were prevented from going to restaurants. He was enjoying a gourmet dinner out with friends in the Napa Valley. That worked out well for him. So Californians do have a choice. They can stick with the progressive fanatics who've governed their state for decades, or they can have a thriving middle class. But they cannot have both. American progressivism is fundamentally an elitist project. It benefits a small class of rich people at the expense of almost everyone else. And progressive government in California is causing the middle class to flee the state. And the longer that goes on, the faster people are going to flee. If the people of LA, they want to have the type of lifestyle that's demanded by the middle class, strong police forces, first-rate schools, reasonable housing, safe streets, common sense government that actually listens to normal people, then they must change course. And it can't be just an executive order, because the progressives cannot and will not deliver the type of pragmatic government that we all need. And that's the angle.
Neighborhoods wiped off the map. Homes reduced to piles of ash. Every day it gets more grim. And the death toll keeps rising. 24 are now confirmed dead, and many more still missing. Forecasters estimate the damage to be more than $250 billion. This would be costlier than Katrina. And the Palisades fires are still only just 13% contained. Wind gusts are predicted to kick up, and firefighters are bracing for explosive fire growth. This isn't over yet. And the looting isn't stopping. At least 29 fire looters have been arrested, including these 4 fiends caught in Santa Monica. One thief breaking into homes in Pacific Palisades was dressed as a fireman when he was apprehended. Nothing is sacred. Jewels, precious heirlooms. Even someone's Emmy was stolen. And remember the guy with the blowtorch last week who was lighting fire to Christmas trees and garbage cans? Turns out he was an illegal alien. His name's Juan. Bandits and arsonists are preying upon this devastated community while it's still smoldering. And residents are gripped by fear and rumors. Here's actress Whitney Cummings.
This is a real text that I just received from a friend of mine about the fires. Some of the neighbors caught a guy setting more fires on the back of our hill. They chased him away. They called 911. I think they caught the guy recently in Woodland Hills trying to put gasoline in sewers. It's happening all over.
Police haven't confirmed this, but there's a sense of every man for himself in Southern California. Some more fortunate families are hiring private firefighters, and actor David Spade's announcing bounties on arsonists.
In California, and people are saying there's guys lighting fires out there, make this worse. They just caught somebody, we're pretty sure was lighting fires, walking on with a blowtorch. They let them go. So if you can find someone lighting a fire and you catch somebody and you can get the cops to bust them and throw them in jail, I'll give you $5,000. So keep your eyes peeled and do what you can out there.
The social contract's been shattered. The government isn't able to help the people it's sworn to protect. Biden wrote a blank check and left on his legacy tour. No one knows where the VP is. Kamala's home state's California. She lives in L.A. They say she could be the next governor. It's like she disappeared. Police just caught 2 sketchy men casing Kamala's house in Brentwood after someone called 911. Here's the latest on what caused the fire. Nothing definitive yet, but the Washington Post says the Palisades blaze may have originally started from fireworks on New Year's Eve. Firefighters put it out, and it may have reignited days later. Other reports say downed power lines might have sparked the inferno, and arson hasn't been ruled out. The governor says he can't get a straight answer out of anybody.
I want to get the answers. And I'll be candid with you, I wasn't getting straight answers.
Yeah.
I watched the press conference. I met with some of those leaders. We had my team start talking to local leaders, saying what's going on. Our state.
And you weren't getting straight answers from
I was
local
getting
leaders.
different answers. When you start getting different answers, then I'm not getting the actual story.
The governor doesn't have a strong grasp of what's happening and keeps passing the buck to the locals. But he's out in front of the cameras every day.
We're dealing with a myriad of issues. I was just talking to Josh Green, the governor down in Hawaii, who had some ideas around some land use concerns he has around speculators coming in.
Why is the governor shimmying around like that with a smile on his face? What kind of presentation is that? Why does he look so gleeful when he's talking about land speculators? It's getting so bizarre that NBC is having to call Gavin out for spewing misinformation.
I don't know what he's referring to when he talks about the Delta smelt and reservoirs. The reservoirs are completely full of the state reservoirs here in Southern California. That mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us.
We do know, though, from reporting here locally that one reservoir that serves the Palisades was not full.
And that's exactly what triggered my desire to get the investigation, to understand what was happening with that local reservoir. That was not a state system reservoir, which the president-elect was referring to as it relates to the Delta and somehow connecting the Delta smelt to this fire, which is inexcusable because it's inaccurate, also incomprehensible to anyone that understands water policy in the state.
Notice how Gavin doesn't get into the details. Empty reservoirs, reservoirs not being built, budget cuts, lawsuits to save the smelt. All that's true. Gavin destroyed dams and then bragged about it.
You know, the Klamath River once supported one of the largest runs of salmon on the western United States. And for decades, dams along the Klamath River blocked salmon from migrating, damaging our ecosystems and hurting native communities who rely on these fish. By removing the dams, we're helping to restore salmon, steelhead, and lamprey populations, restoring, get this, 400 miles of historic spawning habitat, bringing life back to the river, supporting commercial and recreational fishing jobs, and honoring our commitments to tribal nations.
California didn't have enough water and firemen to put out the fire. They had a 5-day warning about record wind gusts. The mayor was in Africa. Gavin Newsom is trying to tell you that California was prepared. And it's all because of climate change. This is too big of a disaster to cover up. Here's a Free Press reporter who just got inside the bone-dry Palisades Reservoir. Watch this.
This was supposed to be the water to put out the Palisades fire. This is the Santa Ynez Reservoir. It's the water supply basically for the Palisades. When they first started fighting the Palisades fire, they ran out of water extremely quickly. Wednesday, 3 a.m., they were basically out. And there's been a lot of talk on why this happened. So how long has this reservoir been empty for?
Since February of last year. There was no communication from the Department of Water and Power to LAFD that there was a water supply issue.
The firefighters, when they started fighting the fires, no one informed them that the reservoir was empty.
What's worse, misinformation or mismanagement? But the ladies of The View say it's racist to report on what the governor's doing.
Who I don't applaud is someone like Jesse Waters on Fox News. This is what he said. He blamed LA fires on diversity. He said that California's woke politics and DEI are the reasons for the fires because Newsom has been tearing down dams because Native Americans, but he called them Indians, wanted some of the river back so they could catch salmon. And Gavin didn't just knock down one dam for the Indians, he knocked them all down. He knocked down 4 of the dams. I'm sorry, this is stolen land, first of all, okay? California is stolen land. Second of all, that's part of what always happens. These dams, there's preservation of the dam. So that was just complete, not only misinformation, but it was racist.
DEI didn't cause the fire, but it distracted the state from preparing to fight it. The LA water chief, Janice Quiones, who makes $750,000 a year, says her #1 priority wasn't water.
You call it powered by equity, and I know that it's been really important for the DWP to put an equity lens on everything.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the #1 thing that attracted me to this role. It's important to me that everything we do, it's with an equity lens and social justice and making sure that we right the wrongs that we've done in the past from an infrastructure perspective, and that we involve the community in that process. And this utility is serious about it, is authentic about it. And so I'm just super excited to be part of that movement.
It's about priorities. The water chief was focused on DEI. The mayor of LA, Karen Bass, was in Africa, even though she promised voters that she'd never travel internationally as mayor. And here she is in Ghana while her city was getting scorched. And instead of fireproofing their state, California today held a special legislative session and Trump-proofed it. Newsom just approved $50 million to resist Trump. $25 million is going to protect Biden migrants from being deported. So the illegal alien caught with a blowtorch, lighting a neighborhood on fire, Juan, Newsom is going to spend millions of dollars to stop us from deporting blowtorch Juan, who you're not going to believe what his excuse was for having the blowtorch. He said it was lighting up a joint. Now Newsom's calling for a Marshall Plan to rebuild LA, so the city will be ready for the Olympics.
With this rebuilding effort needing to take place, is LA going to be ready for all of those global events?
My humble position, and it's not just being naively optimistic, that only reinforces the imperative moving quickly, doing in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. That's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team of looking and reimagining LA 2.0.
You just said you're organizing a Marshall Plan for the rebuilding of California. What is that Marshall Plan? Tell us about this Marshall Plan.
We're just starting to lay out. I mean, we're still fighting these fires.
Do you trust Gavin to rebuild LA? He never built a single reservoir, a high-speed rail. They couldn't even build evacuation roads because bureaucrats sued to stop a pea plant from being stepped on. A pea plant. The only thing Gavin built was a $2 million toilet. These are the guys who think they can control the Earth's temperature, but they can't even control a fire in their own backyard. Did you know before the 1800s, California lost about 4 million acres a year to fires? But when Americans arrived, they managed the land intelligently. And by the end of the last century, California only lost 250,000 acres a year to fires. But in the last 4 years, California is back to losing millions and millions of acres a year to wildfires. Their stupidity has literally set California back centuries. The state that's fighting global warming the hardest is creating the most emissions. What do you think a week of this wildfire smoke is doing to the atmosphere? It's basic common sense. Fireproof the power lines, clean up the underbrush, let cattle and sheep graze there, store more water, and fix the fire department. And the water czar. Liberalism is going up in smoke because it doesn't solve problems. It just creates them by imposing radical ideology on everything. The central promise of liberalism is if you give liberals enough money and power, they'll create utopia. But voters have given liberals all of the money and power in California, a supermajority, and it's literally on fire. So California has to fire these politicians and hire someone else. Trump's heading to LA after he's inaugurated, and he won't be focused on ideology. He's a developer. He just wants to get things done. Will the LA City Council let him?
I'm ready for him. We'll be excited to see him here. To be in Pacific Palisades here in the city of Los Angeles, the San Fernando Valley, and Pasadena, Altadena. We hope that he comes soon before the 20th. And I know that the mayor and the governor are working on that. And so we're very excited to see him here.
Liberalism is destroying paradise. If Americans can just work together, we can get results. But we can't throw money at California without demanding they change their behavior. We can't be tearing down civilization and then rebuilding it over and over and over again. Primetime is going to continue to pray for the victims. And if you want to donate, go to the Red Cross. They need all the help they can get.
But we start tonight on a high note. In less than 7 days, 1 week from today, Joe Biden will be out of the White House for good. At this time next week, Donald Trump will once again be the president of our country. Joe is leaving behind a colossal mess for President Trump. America's second largest city is in ruins, more than 40,000 acres gone, filled with homes and businesses and schools, entire communities burned to the ground. We have a death toll now, 24 and going higher, over 12,000 structures. They have been destroyed, and the fires, they continue to burn completely out of control. Water remains scarce or completely unavailable. Finger pointing and blame are running rampant. And last week, the LA Fire Department was sent out to battle the blaze without water. Crucial fire hydrants, they were dry. A key reservoir was completely empty. Taxpayer-funded reservoirs, 5 of them that was supposed to be built. The voters approved of this in a referendum in 2014. They were never built. Nobody informed the firefighters. Pleas by the police, the fire chief, were completely ignored. Firefighters' budget was cut. Billions yet set aside for wind turbines. Over $650 million federal state dollars allocated to make the port of Los Angeles green, whatever that means. Nobody had a backup plan. You know, nobody was ready to go. Nobody had water tankers lined up to save these neighborhoods. Nobody's taking responsibility, not the president, not the governor, not the mayor, not the fire chief. Take a look.
Did the city of Los Angeles fail you and your department and our city?
It's my job to stand up as a chief and exactly say, justifiably, what the fire department needs to operate to meet the demands of the community.
Did they fail you?
That is our job. And I tell you, that's why I'm here. So let's get us what we need so our firefighters can do their jobs.
Did they fail you?
Yes.
The $17 million budget cut and the elimination of our civilian positions like our mechanics did and has and will continue to severely impact our ability to repair our apparatus. Over the last 3 years, been clear that the fire department needs help. We can no longer sustain where we are. We do not have enough firefighters. With that, I have also requested multiple budgets, interim budgets, to show how understaffed, under-resourced, and underfunded the LAFD is.
Now, as the city's fire budget was just slashed by tens of millions of dollars, the city, the state, they spent lavishly on libraries, green energy boondoggles, social justice programs, DEI initiatives. The state is a sanctuary state. LA is a sanctuary city. Untold hundreds of millions of dollars spent on illegals for their food, their housing, their health care, their education. It is the highest tax state in the entire country. They were not prepared for what was a predictable wildfire with predictable Santa Ana winds. But the California legislature, well, they did just pass a $50 million deal to Trump-proof the state of California. It's a great way to ingratiate themselves to the new president. Gavin, great move. Meanwhile, around L.A., the dry brush was not managed at all. The science of forestry, you can get a degree in it. As we pointed out, it was ignored. The fire department was short-staffed, preoccupied with equity. None of California's overpaid bureaucracy and political class, none of them did their jobs. Now, none of the city's critical fire infrastructure and emergency planning was properly tested. Now, the mayor, Karen Bass, was in Africa when the fire erupted, despite an earlier forecast of heavy winds and the risk of wildfires, and a promise she wouldn't travel as the mayor of Los Angeles. The governor indicated it was not his problem. This is local governments. They need to figure out those fire hydrant things themselves. And yet again, the Biden administration was caught totally flat-footed, completely unprepared. The people of California were failed by a Democratic mayor, a far-left bureaucracy, a governor, a Democratic legislature, a Democratic president. And by the way, guess in the end who's going to end up paying for the rebuild? You. Mark my words. And this is a Democratic president that can barely form a coherent thought, much less manage a major disaster. We saw that with Hurricane Helene. Look at the people in North Carolina. They're still struggling to this day. He didn't seem to remember that Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris in November. Take a look.
Mr. President, do you regret your decision to run for re-election? Do you think that that made it easier for your predecessor to now become your successor?
I don't think so. I think I would have beaten Trump, could have beaten Trump, and I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump, would have beaten Trump.
There's no other way to put this. Joe Biden is out of it, delusional, a cognitive mess. In fact, he just said with a straight face that illegal immigration came way down when he became president. Can't make it up. You decide.
Look, let's get something in mind about the border. When I became president, the numbers came way down, number one. Number two, we had a circumstance where I pushed very hard for a bipartisan agreement to put more people on the border, more Secret Service agents.
Okay, this is nowhere close to reality. His border bill was an amnesty bill. This is a complete, total delusion on his part. All right, take a look at the numbers. Remember that chart? You might remember that, Butler, PA. You see that massive spike, on the right side of your screen? Yeah, that would be Biden. But the delusions, they don't stop there. Today, Biden announced that America is stronger than ever and the world is a more peaceful place. Maybe nobody told him there's war in Europe and war in the Middle East. Maybe he forgot. Take a look.
Compared to 4 years ago, America is stronger. Our alliances are stronger. Our adversaries and competitors are weaker. We have not gone to war to make these things happen. During my presidency, I've increased America's power at every dimension. We've increased our diplomatic power, creating more allies than the United States has ever had in the history of our nation. Today, I can report to the American people, our adversaries are weaker than where we came into this job 4 years ago. Just consider Russia. When Putin invaded Ukraine, he thought he'd conquer Kyiv in a matter of days. But the truth is, since that war began, I'm the only one that stood in the center of Kyiv, not him.
Okay, beyond laughable, actually sad. I guess a preview of coming attractions. His, farewell address is coming this week. A third-rate terrorist organization is still holding Americans hostage if they're alive in Gaza. New wars in Europe and the Middle East, they continue to rage. And China, Iran, Russia are more hostile than they have ever been. They've been emboldened by Joe and Kamala's weakness. And just remember, according to Joe Biden, anything bad that happens around the world or here at home is not his fault. It's climate change. It's climate alarmism. That's always the culprit. Not that, it's Donald Trump. Take a look.
I know some incoming administration, some in the incoming administration, are skeptical about the need for clean energy. They don't even believe climate change is real. I think they come from a different century. They're wrong. They are dead wrong. It's the single greatest existential threat to humanity.
No, it's not. Joe Biden does not have a grasp on reality. Over the past 4 years, while Biden struggled cognitively, the media lied for him, his staff lied for him, far-left bureaucrats, elected Democrats, they have wreaked nothing but havoc on our country. They neglected the basics. They focused on woke social issues. They sacrificed your safety, your security for feelings of victimhood. They opened up our borders. They allowed in terrorists, known terrorists, murderers, rapists, criminals, cartel members, gang members. We have to find them and we have to send them home. And they turned our justice system into a politicized, weaponized arm of the Democratic Party on top of everything. And now it will be up to Donald Trump. 1 week from tonight, it begins. And his administration to fix the country, restore the American dream. It's a heavy lift. It won't be easy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, that's okay, but I expect more. Happy Monday, everyone. So President-elect Donald Trump is preparing more than 100 executive orders starting day one of the new White House. And thanks to Joe Biden, 99 of them have to do with removing the carpet stains in the Oval Office. Yeah. And yet another interview with the corpse that wouldn't leave. President now says, quote, I could have beaten Trump, And I think that Kamala could have beaten Trump. He added, if you don't believe me, just ask my good friend Jimmy Carter. I know. Speaking of Carter, last week, the 5 remaining U.S. presidents attended his funeral. It was weird, though, how everyone kept giving Jill Biden their condolences. L.A. residents are demanding Gavin Newsom explain how they're supposed to survive with empty reservoirs. The governor recommended they try a dry shampoo or perhaps a leave-in conditioner. The homeless L.A. man caught on video wielding a blowtorch is an illegal alien from Mexico. Democrat leaders were quick to defend him as an undocumented welder. Welder's a funny name. All right. I'll take it. It's Monday. Before taking office, L.A. Mayor Karen Bass said she would not go abroad. She might do abroad, but not go abroad. I don't know.
Hey.
I don't know.
If you're going to do it, swing for the fence.
I don't know. I don't know anything about her. At Kamala Harris's home in Brentwood, California, police responded to an alleged burglary, but the suspects were instead detained for violating curfew. And thanks to Doug Emhoff, both of them are now pregnant. Banging away. Officials claim that they weren't trying to loot. They were only trying to remove any flammable materials. And finally, according to a new study, drinking grape juice can greatly lower the chances of erectile dysfunction in older men. In a related story, guess who wants to outlaw grape juice? All right. So the sign of a wise person is their ability to change once they realize they made a mistake. Whether you're a former liberal who's finally come around, or perhaps an organization admitting that you've hired some real idiots. Now,
thanks for coming, B.
Now, okay. Had to get that out of my system. Now, remember, making a mistake doesn't define you. It's what you do after the mistake. You can either say, I admit what I did and I'm ready to try something new, or just keep blaming it on climate change. It's especially true when it comes to Donald Trump. Most idiots dig in their heels hating him, even at the cost of destroying themselves. Look at Robert De Niro. He played a boxer, but it was Trump that gave him brain damage. But I'm also a good example. Oh, sure, I was early pro-Trump. We've heard these rumors that you might run for president, and I was wondering if you do and you win, what would be my role?
Well, I think you'd be a fantastic press secretary. Mm-hmm. You know, would finally have a little personality in that position.
Yeah, exactly. Now, but fast forward a few months. People defend him about making fun of a disability, making fun of John McCain, making fun of women, a woman's face. It just never ends. No one will ever stop defending the crass stuff he says. He's very impulsive. He instead of thinking about what he says, he's impulsive. And it makes you wonder, do you want an impulsive leader or do you want a leader that thinks? I want somebody who can beat Hillary. I don't think an impulsive leader is going to beat Hillary. Really, me?
And he remembers.
Why was I like that? Was it because Dana and I did a line of coke in the bathroom right before showtime? No. She offered, but I said not today.
Wow.
But you know, when I hear myself describing Trump, it reminds me of myself. Witty, powerful, outspoken. And we both dated supermodels. Shout out to Fabio. But why was I so emotional about it? Well, here's an analogy. In the late 1970s, I couldn't wait to hear the Sex Pistols. They were punk rock, and they were going to destroy all the mainstream crap on the radio. But when I got the record, I hated it. It was loud and scary and ugly and evil, and I didn't get it. So I separated the record from my collection. I didn't want its evilness to rub off on my Cheap Trick records like some type of musical STD. But then time passed, and I decided to give it another shot, and it blew my mind. But the record didn't change. I did. What happened there? Why did it take time? Well, like Trump, the Pistols were not asking for me to like it. And I resented that confidence, but then I grew to love it. That's the Trump effect in 3 steps. It's repulsion, confusion, then affection. It's the same 3 emotions I get when I stick my finger in Larry Kudlow's belly button. That's why he's smiling. And so the Trumpian messages that used to upset me then resonated. I changed, Trump didn't. So when people in the media said, I used to like Gutfeld, but he's changed, damn right I changed. If you don't, when you realize you're wrong, you're a idiot. Much like this fella.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go.
Oh. Someone fetch that guy a 12-pack of tampons. That's a Trump effect, but not a healthy one. Here's Trump on meetings with Democrats.
A lot of CEOs, including some who censored you 4 years ago, have been coming down here basically to kiss the ring. Did they change or did you change?
Well, maybe we all changed. I think they've gained a lot of respect. I think they looked at the mandate that we got. As you know, we won the popular vote.
This is a good answer, for it suggests a middle ground, even if he didn't have to give an inch. And it gives Dems a path forward out of the darkness. We all changed. Funny, Trump may turn out to be the greatest ally for the Democratic Party, but not for the reason the media thinks. Trump is their Moses, and that he's parting the sea so Dems can flee their extremism and seek sanctuary in common sense. Just when you thought he couldn't do any more for the Jews, now this. Maybe they're finally ready to get rid of their golden cows. Now, the Trump effect gives you the green light to talk in real terms about real problems. So now Dems no longer have to embrace stupid causes. They can talk about illegal immigration, rising crime, schools. Stephen A. Smith, Bill Maher, Fetterman, they all seem freer. Hell, Fetterman looks positively radiant. Like Frankenstein if they put in the good brain. And why? Trump made it okay not to give a about pronouns and focus on the economy, law and order, and yes, fires. When a fireman is coming up that ladder and it doesn't look like you, who gives a Yeah, I want mine to look like Ryan Gosling, but it's not happening. So when someone like Zuckerberg gets grief for now backing Trump, your instinct might be to say, too late, we're good. But as Scott Adams always says, all good things take too long to happen, including other people coming around. This is why conservative never-Trumpers are so miserable. Their ego won't allow them to admit they were wrong, for their hatred of Trump is tied to their self-worth. But thankfully, not all Dems are like that. RFK, Tulsi, Musk, when faced with new information, they changed too. How ironic for Democrats, really. The guy they've been trying to imprison for years is the one to break them out of their own.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.